So I want you to picture a tiny navy blue ceramic milk jug just sitting quietly on a kitchen counter.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Yeah, and it's hand-thrown pottery. It has this really small, kind of unassuming white heart stamped on the side.
Right.
And it's tiny. I mean, it holds barely enough milk for a single splash in a cup of afternoon tea.
Just a tiny little thing.
Exactly. Now, if you just needed a vessel, to hold a bit of liquid, you could walk into literally any discount shop today and buy a perfectly serviceable, totally indestructible plastic jug for under £1.
Oh, yeah, easily. Or just use a mug you already have.
Right. But the author of the essay we are exploring today, Joseph Bay, he actually paid £10 for this specific ceramic one.
£10 for a tiny milk jug.
Yeah, £10. And because of that £10, he treats this completely unremarkable little object like it's a Fabergé egg.
Oh.
He carefully hand washes it after every single use. He meticulously hand dries it. I mean, he would never even dream of tossing it into the dishwasher or, leaving it to soak overnight in a sink full of dirty mugs.
No, of course not. That'd be risky.
Exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to take this incredibly relatable, maybe slightly absurd quirk of kitchenware management.
Definitely absurd.
Right. And see how Bay transforms it into this really profound, highly stabilizing framework for navigating the anxieties of the modern world.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Why start with the jug?
Well, I mean, it's a masterful piece of writing precisely because it starts so small. It grounds us in this completely universal human behavior before asking us to consider anything cosmic or theological.
Because we all have that one object, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. We all have the thing we inexplicably protect. And what Bay is dissecting in the opening of his essay, which is titled The Milk Jug, is the invisible psychological mechanism driving that protection.
Like why we care so much about a piece of clay. Right. He realizes he doesn't hand wash this jug because the ceramic is fragile. I mean, it is, but that's not the point. He hand washes it because he remembers the exact moment he stood in a shop, turned it over in his hands, felt its weight, and made a really conscious decision to part with a very specific amount of his own money.
Yeah, because £10 for a tiny jug is, it's a stretch.
It is a stretch. It required a sacrifice, no matter how small that sacrifice was.
I'm thinking about the psychology of that sacrifice right now. It sort of reminds me of the stark difference between grabbing one of those free kind of scratchy promotional T-shirts they hand out at corporate events.
Oh, yeah. The ones that never fit right.
Exactly. Versus saving up for, say, 6 solid months to buy a beautifully tailored winter coat.
Oh, totally different mindset.
Completely. Because if you were wearing that free T-shirt and you spill a dark roast coffee all over it, your heart rate doesn't even spike. You don't even blink.
No, you just use it to clean the floor.
Right. You toss it straight into the rag bin in the garage because it cost you $0 and zero effort. So its absolute ruin means absolutely nothing to you.
Which makes sense.
But if you get even a single drop of rain on that tailored winter coat you saved up for, you are like rushing it to the dry cleaners.
Yeah.
You feel this intense, almost aggressive sense of stewardship over it.
That behavioral shift, the exact thing you're describing, that is what Bay is getting at. You are describing what he calls moral weight.
Moral weight.
Yeah.
Okay.
The winter coat possesses a moral weight that the free T-shirt just completely lacks. And we need to unpack what that actually means.
So what does this moral weight of ownership tell us about how we transition from passive interest to genuine commitment?
Well, it's not about the physical weight of the wool, obviously, and it's not even strictly about the financial pain of losing the cash. It's really about an investment of the self.
Investment of the self, meaning?
Meaning when you work for months to save up for something, you are basically converting your finite time, your physical energy, your life force into currency.
Wow. Okay, put that way, it sounds intense.
It is. Because when you exchange that currency for the coat, or even just for a 10-pound milk jug, that object effectively becomes a vessel holding a piece of your own life.
So the careful stewardship, the frantic trip to the dry cleaners, or standing at the sink hand-washing a piece of pottery, it isn't just us being materialistic.
Not at all.
We are protecting the object, because to let it be destroyed would be to let our own expended energy, our own sacrifice, just go to waste.
Precisely. We are no longer separate from the object. Paying the full price is the catalyst that transforms passive interest into this genuine, fiercely protective ownership.
Right.
Bay's core thesis to start this whole framework is pretty simple. What costs us nothing tends to mean nothing.
Right.
But what costs us something demands our care.
Okay, and here is where Bay takes a really fascinating, almost jarring pivot.
Yeah.
Because he takes this highly relatable ground-level consumer psychology,
Yeah.
the whole I paid for it, therefore I protect it thing, and he scales it all the way up. I mean, all the way. He applies it directly to ancient Christian theology to explain the nature of human value.
He really goes for it.
He does. He introduces a verse from the Bible, 1 Corinthians 6:20, which says, "For you were bought at a price."
And he zeroes in heavily on that specific word, bought.
Bought. Not just found, but bought.
Exactly. The framework he's building requires us to look at the concept of spiritual rescue, not as some vague, poetic or sentimental gesture.
Right, not just a nice thought.
No, he frames it as a rigid economic transaction. Humanity wasn't just appreciated from afar. According to the theology Bay is exploring here, humanity was purchased.
And a purchase, by definition, requires a price to be paid.
Always. You can't have a purchase without a cost.
And within the context of the essay, that price is the life of the Son of God. But Bay doesn't just leave it at that surface level, does he? He introduces this theological concept called propitiation.
Yes, propitiation. It's a heavy word.
Here's where it gets really interesting, but also where we could lose people. Because propitiation sounds like a heavy, archaic legal term you would hear in a, 17th century courtroom.
It really does.
So I want to make sure we don't lose the thread in the jargon. If we strip away the jargon, how does the sheer totality of this irreversible transaction completely change how the purchaser views what he just bought?
Okay, so if we look at how Bay frames it, propitiation isn't merely the historical idea that Jesus died on a cross. That's part of it, but it's more specific.
Right.
It's the specific mechanical belief that he bore the full accumulated weight of divine consequence that human rebellion had generated.
So all the consequences.
All of it. The idea is that he absorbed it entirely, exhausting it completely. It was like a total liquidation of assets, so to speak.
Total liquidation.
Yeah. It cost him everything, leaving absolutely nothing left in reserve. It was an all-in move.
Let's ground that mechanism in an analogy so we can really see how it changes the psychology of the purchaser. Think of it like a billionaire who decides to liquidate his entire global empire.
Oh, I like this. Okay.
Right. He sells off every shell company, every piece of real estate, every stock portfolio, every yacht, literally every penny he has, just to buy back one single stolen painting.
Right. Just for the one thing.
The psychological mechanism here is that the painting isn't just a piece of art hanging on a wall anymore. It is the physical embodiment of his entire net worth.
Exactly.
It represents his complete financial ruin and his total sacrifice. So if Bay is saying God did that for humanity, it means the purchaser cannot possibly view the people he bought with like apathy.
That is the exact causal link Bay is making. The sheer totality of that transaction, this irreversible exhaustion of infinite resources, it fundamentally alters the relationship between the purchaser and the purchase.
Because the price determines the value.
Yes, the ultimate expression of the rule we just talked about. If you bankrupt yourself to acquire something, your perception of that object is forever locked in at the highest possible valuation.
It has to be.
Right. The rescue wasn't a snap of the fingers. It wasn't effortless because it was an agonizing, all-consuming cost. The value placed on the people purchased through that act is literally immeasurable.
Which perfectly sets up what Bay calls the airtight logic of Romans 8.32.
Ah, yes.
This is where he connects the 10-pound jug directly to the day-to-day, Tuesday morning reality of the people who have been purchased. The verse basically asks, if God did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us, how will he not also freely give us all things?
It's a classic rhetorical device. It's known as the how much more argument.
How much more?
Right, and the premise is ruthlessly logical. If you go back to your billionaire analogy, it would be like that man liquidating his entire empire to buy that priceless painting, bringing it home, and then refusing to spend $20 on a dehumidifier to keep the canvas from rotting.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
It defies all logic. Bay applies this directly to the reader. If God was willing to give up the absolute hardest, most impossibly valuable thing to acquire you, why on earth would he then suddenly become stingy and neglect the lesser everyday things required to sustain you?
Right.
If Bay is willing to stand at a kitchen sink and gently hand wash a piece of pottery just because he remembers spending 10 pounds on it, how much more intensely will God guard humanity, which cost him an infinite price?
Okay, I am tracking with the logic. The how much more argument makes perfect sense on paper.
It does.
But I want to play devil's advocate for the listener and just provide a gentle pushback here.
Sure.
Because there is a massive friction point for anyone living in the real world. That logic feels great when you're sitting in a comfortable armchair reading an essay. But when you look at the reality of the world today,
Yeah, it's a mess.
it's a total mess. When someone gets a terrifying medical diagnosis, or when they look at a bleak bank account, or they turn on the news and see global chaos, it is incredibly hard to feel guarded or protected.
Absolutely.
The dehumidifier breaks, the painting gets damaged anyway, bad things happen constantly. So how does Bay's essay bridge the gap between this airtight theological logic and the very real fear people are feeling right now?
It's a vital pushback, and honestly, to Bay's credit, it is the exact friction point he addresses next.
Oh, he goes there.
He does. He doesn't shy away from the harsh reality of modern suffering. He transitions his focus from high theology down into what he explicitly calls the gathering storm.
The gathering storm.
Yeah.
It's interesting how Bay frames the modern world here, because he really doesn't sugarcoat it.
No, not at all.
He points directly to geopolitical instability. He talks about economic pressures that are just squeezing everyday people. He highlights the slow, terrifying crumbling of institutions that society used to implicitly trust.
Everything we see on the news.
Yeah, and he describes a culture that is highly reactive and seemingly in open rebellion against any foundational truth. He is validating the reader's fear. He's saying, yes, the threat is visible on the horizon, the storm is real, and the instinct to panic is entirely justified based on the data.
He validates the fear, but, and this is crucial, he refuses to let the reader anchor themselves to it.
Right.
To bridge that gap between earthly anxiety and divine logic, he introduces a new metaphor. Or rather, he reintroduces a very old one.
Okay, what is it?
The shepherd from Psalm 23. You know, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
Right, very famous verse.
Yes, but Bay violently disrupts how modern people usually picture the shepherd.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask someone to picture the Psalm 23 shepherd today, they usually imagine like a Sunday school felt board.
Oh, exactly, the velvet paintings.
Yeah, a guy with perfect hair, wearing an incredibly clean, soft robe, just sitting on a grassy hill surrounded by fluffy white sheep. Maybe he's playing a little wooden flute in the sunshine. It is a very passive, tranquil, almost sleepy image.
Right, but Bay reminds the reader of the full resume of this specific shepherd. This isn't just a pastoral figure of tranquility.
Okay.
This is the exact same God who ripped the Red Sea in half.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This is the God who appeared in a terrifying, unconsuming fire in a burning bush. He's the God who led an entire population of emancipated slaves through a brutal, lethal wilderness without losing a single person he had promised to bring through.
So he's not just playing a flute.
Oh, far from it. Bay's point is that the biblical shepherd doesn't just sit in the sunshine. He leads his incredibly expensive flock through valleys. Specifically, he leads them through dark valleys.
So the presence of the dark valley, the geopolitical instability, the crumbling economy, the terrifying medical diagnosis, it doesn't negate the presence of the shepherd.
Exactly. The storm doesn't mean the shepherd has abandoned the flock. In fact, the dark valley is exactly where his terrifying protective power is most required and most active.
That shifts the whole perspective.
It does. Bay writes that this shepherd cares with a fierce personal investment.
Fierce personal investment. I love that. That phrase completely changes the emotional temperature of the essay.
It really is.
Because it strips away the sterile mathematical feeling of the airtight logic we were just talking about. And it fundamentally redefines that soft pastoral imagery into something much more intense.
Yes, it turns the shepherd into a relentless, heavily armed defender of an invaluable asset.
If you are the asset, and the cost to acquire you was the infinite liquidation of divine resources, the shepherd isn't just casually watching you wander around a meadow.
No. He's actively, fiercely guarding his investment against the wolves, against the storm, against the darkness.
Because he looks at the unimaginable cost of the purchase, and he says, worth it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Worth it. And that is the mechanism that provides actual, tangible comfort in a chaotic world. It takes us all the way back to the psychology of the milk jug.
Right.
If a human being will fiercely protect a tiny 10-pound piece of pottery just because of the memory of a minor financial sacrifice.
A tiny bit of friction.
Right, then the God of the universe will fiercely protect the people purchased with the infinite sacrifice of his own son. He simply does not abandon what he bankrupted himself to acquire.
So what does this all mean for the listener? I mean, if we synthesize all of this, we pull together the 10-pound jug, the absolute exhaustion of resources and propitiation, the airtight logic of Romans 8, and this fiercely protective shepherd who parts oceans.
Yeah.
How does holding on to this specific mental framework act as an anchor when institutions crumble?
Well, the anchor is the unchangeable objective nature of your purchased value. Think about how we normally operate.
Okay.
When institutions crumble or the economy shakes or we lose our jobs, our inherent sense of value and security violently shakes with it.
Yeah, we panic.
We panic. And that happens because we have accidentally anchored our worth to temporary shifting things. We quietly tell ourselves, if my career fails, my value decreases. Or if my country is politically unstable, my life is fundamentally unprotected.
We tie our worth to the weather.
Beautifully said. Yes. Bay is offering a completely different place to drop your anchor. He is arguing that your value is permanently set in stone at the exact moment of that irreversible transaction on the cross.
Wow.
Your security isn't based on the unpredictable weather of the current cultural or economic climate. It is based entirely on the fierce personal investment of the purchaser.
Because the price has already been paid, the transaction cleared, you can't unbuy it.
Precisely. You can't unbuy it. The anchor is the factual reality that you are bought at a price, and therefore you belong to someone who is fully capable of carrying you through the storm.
Which means you are no longer your own.
Right. Which means the responsibility for your ultimate preservation shifts off of your exhausted shoulders.
Which is a relief.
A huge relief. It shifts onto the shoulders of the one who bought you.
He's got this. That is the phrase Bay uses to end the essay. And it is such a remarkably quiet, steady note to land on after exploring such massive, heavy concepts.
It really is.
We started this deep dive looking at a tiny navy blue milk jug sitting on a kitchen counter. A completely unremarkable object that was treated with an absurd level of care simply because it cost its owner a tiny bit of friction to acquire.
Just 10 pounds.
Just 10 pounds. And we follow the causal logic of that human psychology all the way up to the immense, stabilizing comfort of being bought with a price. The journey Bay takes us on is a powerful paradigm-shifting reminder that value is never intrinsic to the object itself.
No.
Value is bestowed. It is assigned by the one who is willing to pay the price. And the one who paid an infinite price for you does not abandon his purchase. He's got this.
It truly is a brilliant use of the mundane to illuminate the profound. It trains the reader to look at the ordinary things in their own lives, the tailored coat, the old car, the chipped coffee mug they stubbornly protect, and recognize those instincts as tiny localized reflections of a much greater cosmic reality of care and provision. Every time you protect something you bought, you are echoing the mechanics of your own spiritual rescue.
Which leaves us with a truly fascinating application for how we walk through the world tomorrow. We have spent this entire deep dive talking about how this perspective acts as an anchor for you, the listener, when you are facing your own storms and fears. But I want to turn that lens outward for just a second as we wrap up.
Okay, let's do it.
If Bay's framework is right, if the psychological truth is that what costs us nothing tends to mean nothing, and if the theological reality is that humanity was purchased at an unimaginable, infinite price, how does that radically alter the way you view the random strangers you pass on the street tomorrow?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right. The person who cut you off in traffic, the cashier who gets your order wrong, the coworker who just constantly gets on your nerves. If God liquidated everything to acquire them too, are they not walking around with the exact same invisible, immeasurable price tag hanging from them?
Absolutely, they have to be.
It's something heavy, but also deeply beautiful to mull over the next time you pour a splash of milk into your tea. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.